The Halberts had worked the same patch of Missouri farmland for 5 generations. 20 acres of stubborn earth, a red barn with a rusted roof, and a crooked old farmhouse that leaned like a tired man after supper. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and that mattered more than most things. Ellie loved it best in the mornings, when the dew was thick on the grass and the animals were loud with hunger. She was only 8, but she already had chores: gathering eggs, scattering feed, filling troughs. She'd named half the chickens herself. Her favorite was Petunia, a speckled hen who liked to sit in Ellie's lap and peck gently at her shirt buttons. Grandpa Earl said animals could feel your heart, same as people. He told her that while sitting on the porch swing, whittling a stick into nothing. "You be kind to 'em," he said, "and they'll be kind to you. That's how it works." He never had much use for talking about feelings, but his voice went softer when he spoke about the land. The old stone well sat at the back of the property, tucked behind a windbreak of cedar. Earl's father had dug it by hand nearly a century ago, shovelful by shovelful until the earth gave up its water. Never run dry and never run dirty, clean as a whistle. Grandpa liked to say, though he didn't drink from it anymore. Not since the city piped water in. The water company convinced them to hook their house up to the city water because they said that shallow wells are more likely to have lead. Now it was for the animals and crops. Ellie thought the well was beautiful in an odd way. Its round mouth was capped with a concrete slab, the stones below moss dark and cool. But Grandpa always told her to stay away from it. "Deep water's got a mean streak," he'd say, "and it don't give back what it takes." Dad didn't talk much. He was too busy trying to keep the farm afloat. The summer had been dry and the corn came up thin. The soybeans were worse. He'd already started working afternoons at the feed store in town between spending mornings and evenings in the fields. "We'll make it through," he told Mom when he thought Ellie wasn't listening, but there was a tightness in his voice that made her stomach knot. Life on the farm was quiet, steady, and full of work. Until the morning Petunia didn't come out of the coop. Ellie found her lying stiff, eyes bulging, beak crusted with a dark, sticky fluid. 2 more hens lay nearby, their wings twisted at strange angles. She called for Dad, her voice high and shaking. He knelt beside the bodies, his jaw clenched. The next day, one of the goats began trembling and vomiting froth. By week's end, the cows refused to eat, their eyes clouded and wild. The smell of sickness seemed to hang over the barn. Some sort of bacterial disease, Grandpa swore, but no one could figure out where it was coming from. The grain should be fine. Each animal ate a different type. The well? It had run clean for 100 years. One evening, Ellie wandered to the well just before dusk. She'd been told 100 times not to mess with it, but as she played nearby, she heard something beneath the surface. Not dripping, not splashing. Frantic, thrashing. Her first thought was that one of her chickens had fallen in, though she couldn't imagine how. She hesitated, then pushed the slab just far enough to peek. What she saw made her chest seize. She dropped the slab with a bang and ran full tilt for the house, not stopping until she slammed into her father's legs. Minutes later, the whole family stood at the edge of the well. Dad shone his flashlight down, but all he saw was the slick inner wall and black water below. The smell rising from it made Ellie gag. Not the earthy mineral smell she knew, but the sweet rot of meat gone bad. Dad turned on the pump. Water spewed from the hose in a cloudy gush, carrying the same stench. He swore under his breath, "We're not letting the animals near this until we get it cleaned out." "Little Ellie says she saw something down there," he told Grandpa later. "Probably a raccoon or possum drowned in it. Whatever it is, we've got to get it out." That night, when the house was quiet, Dad and Grandpa went back to the well. Dad leaned over, shining the light again, and froze. Something was looking back. Its eyes were pale, almost translucent, just above the waterline. Long fingers clung to the inner wall, twitching at the light like slugs recoiling from salt. Then, without a sound, it slid under the surface, leaving only a ripple. The sheriff promised to send someone by in a few days. But the Halberts didn't have a few days. The next morning, the last cow lay dead. The goats had broken through the fence and were found near the barn, their fur matted with bile and blood. They hadn't just died, they'd been attacked. Grandpa spat in the dirt. It's not just an animal, he said. It's feeding. Something that big that could take on a goat. It got into that sealed well and is getting out somehow. It knows something we don't. Might be a danger to us. That night, they made a plan. A baseball bat, rope, and a steel cage built from cattle panels. Dad was the one to go down, tied off to the tractor, and lowered like a worm on a hook. They didn't want to shoot the thing and fish it out because it would bleed in the water, making the problem worse. The plan was to hit it with a baseball bat and knock it unconscious. Dad had been the #1 slugger in high school, and if anything could knock the thing out cold, it was him. The tractor roared to life, and the noise woke Ellie. She slipped outside, heart thudding, and found them at the well. She shouldn't have been there, but they needed someone to hold the flashlight. Her hands trembled so badly the beam shook like a strobe. The well widened into a natural cavern at the bottom, walls slick with black moss. Floating in the pool was the thing, long-limbed, skin like dead fish, mouth opening the wrong way. It lunged. Dad screamed and the rope snapped taut. Grandpa gunned the tractor, hauling him up. A thud and splash, then the rope bounced and went still. Ellie jumped back, falling on her bottom. The flashlight fell out of her hand and broke on the hard ground, plunging them into darkness. Grandpa continued to pull the rope back with the tractor. After what felt like an eternity, a hand grasped the rim of the well. It was human. Dad emerged from the darkness, holding on to a limp thing with his other hand. He threw it into the cage and chained it closed. The thing slowly gained consciousness again and stood in the cage. It was big, almost as tall as Dad. It stood on its hind legs and stared at us. It let out an angry screech, then bang. Grandpa's .45 roared, and the thing fell limp in a pile. They buried the cage deep in the woods, poured lime over it, and said a prayer. The animals stopped dying. The water cleared, though they never drank from the well again. They sealed the well so nothing would ever be able to get in or out. Dad's crops were too far gone to save, and he worked the feed store full-time that year to keep them afloat. But the farm survived. Years later, little Ellie became Ellie, and she sometimes thought she could still hear that screech, muffled and far below, from under the capped well. Time passed. Grandpa Earl died one winter, and Dad followed a few years later, worn down by decades of work. The farm came to Ellie in a will written in her father's neat block letters. She moved back with her husband and their little boy, finding the old house smaller than she remembered, the barn leaning a bit more, the land still stubborn as ever. The well sat where it always had, behind the cedar windbreak, capped and sealed. Her son asked about it once while chasing the dog across the yard. "What's in there?" he asked. Ellie looked at the concrete slab, the moss-dark stones beneath, the place where her childhood ended. She heard herself answer in her grandfather's voice. "Deep water's got a mean streak," she said, "and it don't give back what it takes." That night, long after the house went quiet, Ellie stood by the well alone. She ran her hand over the cool, rough concrete and thought she heard it again. Faint, like a memory. A wet, echoing screech from somewhere far below.
It was the fall of 1953, or maybe it was 1954. I was a young boy about your age, 8 or 9. Father had me out back by the barn chopping wood. It was supposed to be a cold winter that year. He would say that you would know because the pigs would gather sticks. Don't know if it was true or not. Seemed like every winter was cold. Back then, you had to keep a fire going in the fireplace to keep the house warm. Not like today, where you just press a button and get the exact temperature that you want. It was hard work back then. You had to be very uncomfortable to be comfortable. Father always told me that wood keeps you warm 3 times, when you cut it, when you split it, and when you burn it. The sun was getting close to going down. Everything was a bright golden hue. The leaves had all changed color, and some were starting to fall deep in the woods behind the house. I heard this sound. Nothing like what I had ever heard before. Sorta sounded like a woman screaming, but different. Had this deep sound with it that ate to my soul. I stopped for a moment to listen, but didn't hear anything. Decided to get back to work before Father found me standing around and tanned my hide for being lazy. A few minutes later, I hear it again. I couldn't help wondering if maybe it was a woman. I felt pretty confident that I could handle anything that was bothering her. I was full of bronze and I had an axe, so I headed off into the woods to find her. I probably went a mile into the woods and didn't see a thing. I was about to turn around. It was going to be dark soon, and I didn't want a chance getting lost overnight in the cold woods. Suddenly, I heard something. Some limbs, not even 20 feet away from me. Then I heard it again. It was so loud, that sound. I can still hear it today. It shook me to my core. I looked over and it came out from some bushes. I thought it was a bear at first, bigger than a black bear, a grizzly, but it had black hair. It looked right at me. Its face looked like a lion's, but it had twisting horns like a goat's. It stepped towards me with confidence. It knew who was in charge. It didn't move like a bear. It moved like a wildcat. I ran. I just ran as fast as I could. I don't know if it chased me. I couldn't hear it. Not sure if you would be able to hear that thing running or not. I didn't look back to check. I didn't stop till I was back at the house. I locked the door behind me and went straight to Mother and Father. Nobody ever believed me, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. That thing is real. It's out there. This is the story that I heard throughout my entire childhood. Every family get-together, every holiday, every bedtime story. That was my grandpa's favorite tale. I don't know if he was telling the truth or not. It could have been a dream or a story he heard from a friend. Or maybe he just made it up. It made me so scared as a kid to go into the woods. When I got older, I tried to see if anyone else had seen anything like it on the internet. Turns out that my grandpa wasn't the only one that has seen something like that a bunch of people had in the Arkansas and Missouri area. They call it the Ozark Howler. It is a mythical creature, kind of like Bigfoot. Most people do not believe in it at all, but the ones who do swear to their lives that it is real. My grandpa got the land and house after his father died. He lived there his whole life. Last year, he passed away. When I was a kid, my parents moved us up north to Omaha, Nebraska. Over the past year, I have been thinking a lot about those stories that he would tell me. He always had some sort of story, but they never seemed far-fetched or made up. He took me fishing a few times when I was a kid. Each time when we got home, he would tell my parents the adventures we had on the creek, and they were always right. He was never one who would be like. We caught 43 crappie and the smallest one was a foot long. What if he really did see that thing? My mom and her brother both inherited the land. Neither of them wanted to sell it, but it didn't make sense to keep it and pay all the taxes. They decided to lease out a part of it and have a cell tower placed on it. The money they made from that covered the taxes completely and left them with a couple of $100s left over each month. I still had a week of vacation left, and the year was coming to an end, so I thought I would go check out the old cabin. Maybe spend a couple of nights in a tent out in the woods. I have a girlfriend, but I thought it would be better to leave her at home for this trip. She didn't understand. Had quite a fight before I left about it. I will have to deal with that when I get home. But I wanted it to be like my grandpa's experience. Just me out in the woods. I didn't tell my mom I was going to go out to look for that thing. The one good thing that came from Grandpa's passing was that she wouldn't have to hear about that creature again. 43 years of hearing that story over and over can get old fast. So it was just me on the road. I rented a Jeep Renegade for the trip. It will be getting dark by the time I get there. I was hoping to get there earlier, but I was held up with traffic in Kansas City. I just zoned out with the radio for the next few hours until I got there. Not really thinking about what will happen if I actually see this thing, just focusing on enjoying the place where my grandfather grew up. Maybe it will help me understand him more. The sun was starting to set when I arrived. The golden light cut through the winter blue of the Ozarks like claws. I decided that I will stay in my grandfather's house tonight. Tomorrow I will set up the tent in the woods. I hadn't realized how long my grandpa had been away from the house. During his last few years, he had declined a lot. He had to spend the last bit of life he had trapped away in a nursing home like an animal. After his death, The family ravaged his place, fighting over little knickknacks that ended up being worthless and selling everything else that they didn't want that my grandfather had spent his whole life collecting. They left some stuff, the beds, couches, and personal things like documents, so that the family could come back and have a weekend getaway. Since then, not a soul has been in there. When they cleared out the house, they did not take the time to clean it. They just took what they wanted, then sent the rest to auction. The whole house had a musty smell. The roof looked old from the outside. It might have been damaged in a storm recently and made a leak for rain to get in. Maybe I could spend some of my time fixing up the place and getting it back to its prime. The first night, I slept like a baby. I wasn't too keen on sleeping in a bed or on the couch because I was scared that it might be full of bugs or worse. So I used my air mattress in the middle of the living room. If there was any howling that first night, I had no idea. The next morning, I woke up eager to look through my grandpa's stuff to learn more about him. He had turned the spare room into an office. There was an old desk in there that he would never let anyone touch. Maybe it was because he didn't want me as a kid messing anything up. Maybe it was because he had something in there he didn't want anyone to see. I started digging through it after I ate some leftover chips from the drive. I dug through a lot of receipts. Mostly from the hardware store. I guess he thought he might need to return a box of screws he got in 1974. There were letters from family members and friends. It looked like he kept every letter that he had ever gotten. There were a lot fewer letters from more recent years. I didn't know he actually kept letters. He always wrote handwritten letters to my mom and me a couple of times a year. I used to write back when I was a kid. Then, eventually, I would just call him when I got a letter. Then I would just read it and throw it away like a generic birthday card without cash inside. If I had known how much they meant, I would have taken more time to write more often. In the bottom drawer of the desk was a large folder. It's beige, and the corners are almost black from so much use. The edges burst with all different types of paper. Some were notebook papers, some were letters, and some were even napkins. It looked like there was once an attempt to organize them, but it had gotten out of hand with so much. I opened the cover, and the first thing I saw was an old handwritten letter from my grandpa. He had written his story of the Howler just like he always told. His sloppy cursive writing was almost too illegible to read, but I knew the story well enough that I could read it. The next page was another handwritten letter. It wasn't as old or as detailed, but it read, "Hello, Raymond. I have that story that you were asking me to write down. Not sure why you needed me to write it. I told you what happened the other day, but here we go. About a year ago, I was driving down County Road 413, and about a mile away from the old general store, I saw something in the road. It was large, and it looked like it was black, or a dark brown. When I got closer, it turned its head around and looked at me. Beady red eyes with horns. It looked like a puma, but those ain't around here. And I know I saw horns on that thing. When it saw me, it ran off into the woods. It had been in the middle of the road, eating a deer. That was the only time I'd seen something like that. The next page was a military document, or at least that's what it looked like. It had a circular stamp in the top left corner with an eagle. Most of the letter was marked out with black bars of ink, but I was still able to read some of it. After a local sheriff deputy called about a large, uncategorized animal. A large chunk was missing here, 4 lines of the document. Tribe took over and handled the situation. Returned from Hinto Caverns with the mission accomplished. How would my grandpa get a hold of a document like that? I didn't believe it. I felt bad for him. He spent his life chasing a fairy tale, and everyone knew it. Who knows how many of these letters were fake stories? Probably all of them. It's a small town. Everyone knew what he thought, and they made up these stories and gave them to him to get him going. I couldn't read any more of them. If this thing were actually real and that many people had an experience with it, then it would be a documented animal, not just an urban legend. I decided to go outside and split some wood to get my mind off those stories. I would need some wood to make a fire anyway. The air outside was brisk. It made it hard to hold onto the axe handle as my knuckles hurt and felt swollen from the cold. The first couple of swings jolted through my fingers. After those couple of swings, my body warmed up and I didn't notice my fingers hurting. Suddenly, I really understood what my great-grandpa would say about wood. Around noon, I felt like I had thumped the log enough. Most swings just bounced off the wood, but I did manage to get some split. I had made a very small pile with my work, but it should be enough to keep a campfire going through the night. I had underestimated how hard it was to split wood. The only thing that kept me going for so long was thinking about my grandpa doing it as a child, and I couldn't hardly do it as an adult. Made me realize I needed to put the phone down more often and do something hard for a change. I should have at least put on a pair of gloves. The palms of my hands were covered in blisters, and a couple had popped, leaving bloody prints on the axe handle. I had packed enough canned vegetables and meat to last a month. I wasn't sure how much I would eat of just canned chicken or a can of green beans, so I went a bit overboard. While I was eating some tuna mixed with corn, I wouldn't recommend it, by the way, I texted my girlfriend. I hadn't texted her since I left, and I hadn't heard anything from her, so I knew that she was mad that I went on this trip by myself. That being said, I thought it would be better to text than call and run down my phone battery listening to her bitch for an hour. After a few texts of, "I miss yous" and blah blah blah, she seemed happy and I went on with my day. My hands didn't feel like it, but I needed to put up the tent before it got dark. I also need to make a fire before the sun's warmth wears off. My dad used to take me camping some when I was a kid. It wasn't very primal. We would stay at a KOA, so we had running water and access to electricity, but at least I learned how to put up a tent. The one I brought was the same tent my dad and I used to use. It wasn't fancy, but it would keep any rain out and keep the wind off of me. Making a fire was the easiest part of the day. I brought lighter fluid. I was going to try to keep the fire going throughout the week so I wouldn't have to keep making new fires. As it became evening, I sat in the tent and enjoyed the surroundings. I set up camp on the edge of the woods. I wanted to be close enough to the house that I could go inside if it got too cold. But I also wanted to be out enough that I could hear any noises. The leaves had all fallen, but they still rustled on the ground in the wind. The naked branches swayed in the cold as it became darker. I noticed some squirrels gathering nuts and crows circling something dead in the woods. Besides those noises, it is silent. Hours go by as I just listen, not doing a thing. I didn't even think about my phone, or my grandpa, or this creature I came to see. Nothing really mattered at that time. A sound cracked through the silence. I wasn't sure what it was. It sounded kind of like an elk call I had seen on the Discovery Channel when I was a kid, but it was different. There aren't elk around here, not that I have ever heard of. That couldn't be it. I listened intently to hear it again. Once again, it rang out, but this time it was different. It was the same sound like an elk, but it was quick, little bursts of sound, like it was a pulsing sound. It sounded like no animal I had ever heard, and it came from deep in the woods. Without hesitation, I ran into the woods to get closer and see what made that sound. Could it be the howler? After about 100 feet into the woods, I stopped as I realized that I could hear nothing besides my feet stopping on the leaves. Whether it was the howler or some other animal, nothing was going to stick around if it heard me barging through the woods like that. I slowed to a walk. I tried to avoid any leaves or sticks on the ground. How far could that sound travel? Was it a mile away or just ahead? I couldn't stop trying to replay that sound in my head as I walked to determine how far away it was. It had to be far, right? The noise came again. A long, high-pitched yell. It almost sounded like a girl's scream, but there was something to it that sounded deeper, like you knew whatever it came from was large. It came from my right. Either it was moving or I had lost track of my direction. It was much louder too. This time I must be getting closer. By this time, the light of day was disappearing, and it was getting a lot harder to tell what was in front of me, let alone which direction I was going. I could use my phone's flashlight, but I didn't want to scare it off with the light. Plus, that would drain my battery, and I might have to use the compass later to get back. So I kept going as straight as I could. Stepping over fallen limbs and going around trees made it hard to know if I was going in a straight line, but I thought that I might be. Suddenly, something stopped me in my tracks. Sharp pain pierced my body in different places, and I was being held in place. I panicked for a second before I realized what had happened. I walked right into a barbed wire fence. I felt a warm liquid running down my arm. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight for just a moment to see how bad the cut was. It wasn't deep, but it went from my elbow all the way up to my shoulder. I wiped the blood off and continued on. I pulled the middle wires apart so I could go through. A couple more snags on my back and legs, and I was through. After a few steps, the stinging itch came from the cut. I could feel blood starting to drip down my arm again. Maybe it was a little deeper than I was thinking. I wiped it away again, but blood sprang from it again. I needed to get back to the house and take care of this. I can always come back out here tomorrow night. The next morning, I slept in. I woke to the intense beams of light from the sun, blinding my eyes. 10 o'clock. I haven't slept in that late since I was in high school. I thought I would spend the day trying to figure out where the leak was in the roof. I'm not a carpenter or anything, but I could probably smear some tar on a hole. I found a can of tar in the garage. Now I will just have to get into the attic and find the leak. I was hoping for a nice dusty movie attic with a floor and a light, but it wasn't like that at all. The floor was all rafters that I had to balance on, so I didn't fall through the ceiling. With each step, I kicked up swarms of glass-filled dust from the old insulation. It must have been the first batch of insulation ever made. It was hard, and most of it had turned black from the humidity that the attic pulled in through the vents. A little fiberglass never hurt anybody. As my eyes drew from the insulation up to the roof, I noticed the leak. It was a bit worse than I thought. A lot worse. The plywood over the spare room was so rotten that I could stick my fingers right through it. That wasn't going to stop any water that came to it. How the hell are you supposed to fix that? I would need to take the shingles off and replace the plywood, then put the shingles back on. At least that's what I learned from watching an hour of YouTube in the attic. I could probably get a sheet of plywood in the Jeep. The old shingles are most likely shot, so I would need to get some of those too. I was about 20 minutes into my YouTube lessons on how to replace shingles when I heard the doorbell. The sound paralyzed me, not knowing if I should answer it or stay where I was. Not making a sound, I realized that my Jeep was out front. Someone must be thinking that a squatter found the abandoned house and took refuge. I thought I should go down and answer before they call the police. When I answered the door, a very tall man stood on the other side. He must have been 6'6" or something. He had long, straight black hair with nearly black eyes. His skin was dark complexioned. He definitely had some white in his family somewhere, but he was mostly Native American. My grandpa had told me there was a tribe of natives living in this tiny town. "Hey, can I help you?" "What are you doing here?" he responded. "This was my grandpa's house. I'm just down for the week." "Walt's or Olivia's son?" "Olivia is my mom. Is that all you want?" I tried to end the conversation so I could get back to the roof. "Your grandfather, he was a good man." "Thanks, I liked him too." "Lots of stories, though." "Yeah, that's why I'm down here. He always talked about a creature. Don't believe in it, but I wanted to come down and see for myself. I might be able to get a hint where to look for the creature if this guy knows anything." Yes, that was his favorite. Just a story, though. I wouldn't waste my time chasing a fairy tale. "I heard something last night. Some sort of howling that I haven't heard before. I tried to find it, but it was too far away." I pointed in the direction that I went, searching to prod a little information. "That way? That is my land over there. Lots of things come out at night that you don't hear in Omaha." His eyes lost the slight bit of friendliness they had. "Dogs, coyotes, sometimes we get an occasional wolf. Who knows what you heard?" "I didn't know that was your land. I turned around when I got to the fence. It got me pretty good." I told him as I showed my arm. "About 800 acres. Been in the family for a long time." "You haven't heard anything about this thing?" "The woods are large. I wouldn't go in there by yourself at night. Good way for a city slicker to get lost and never found again." He had become completely cold towards me as he turned and went back to his car. I hadn't noticed his car before, but he was driving a Jeep too. An old 90s Wrangler without a top. Most of those Jeep guys have ducks on their dash, but this guy didn't. He had a bunch of blue crystals. The sun caught them, glaring into my eyes, catching my attention. While I was out of the attic, I might as well eat some lunch and look up how to fix this roof. A couple of cans of green beans later, I decided that I needed something a little more satisfying for my next meal. I'm sure there is a small grocery store somewhere in this small town. I could get some hot dogs and eat them tonight over the campfire. I found a common dollar a few miles away. I was going to ask the cashier about the creature, but she was so high that it was all she could do to put the pack of hot dogs in the grocery bag. She fought with the bag, trying to get it to open for at least a minute. After I got back to the house, I thought it might be better to move camp to the fence in the woods instead of working on the house more. I didn't want to run into the fence again when I couldn't see. Plus, I now know that once I pass the fence, I will have 800 acres before I have to worry about another fence. Whatever I heard the night before had to be in part of the woods. Camp went up fast this time. I had the tent up and the fire going in less than an hour. I ended up eating the entire pack of hot dogs by the time the sun went down. I didn't realize just how hungry I was. The crackling of the fire seemed extremely loud when I was trying to listen to what was going on outside of the fire's light. With a few scoops of dirt, I had the fire out, now to wait in the darkness. I was completely still for hours, waiting and listening for a sound. At 11:30, I heard it. That same sound from the night before. I jumped to attention, trying to determine which direction it came from. The sound came again, and I was on my way, tracking through the woods. I kept walking for about 30 minutes. I checked my phone. It was 11:55. I wasn't going very fast, so I wouldn't make noise. By this point, it had moved on, or I went in the wrong direction. I was nearing the top of a hill. I could tell by the slight line of darkness that divided the ground from the sky. The sky was slightly lighter than the ground. I thought I would make it to the top of the hill and see what was over it. If there was nothing, then I was going to turn back around. As I walked over the top, I looked around. It was hard to see through all the trees, but at the bottom of the hill, maybe 300 yards, was a small flickering light. Finally, I had a guiding light to help me know my direction. I crept closer and closer, bouncing from tree to tree for cover. I wasn't sure what the light was coming from, but I knew it wasn't any kind of light bulb. As I got within 100 yards, I could tell that it was a fire. A bonfire. A very large bonfire. I could see people around it, but it was hard to tell with the bright light of the fire melting away into the darkness. I was straining my eyes to see who was around the fire when I heard a twig snap right behind me. I turned around to see two large people standing over me. It was hard to make them out, but they wore robes that drug on the ground. Over the robe, I could see gauntlets shimmering from the firelight. They both had armor on their heads, too. A smooth helmet that didn't have holes for a mouth or eyes. The smooth metal went all the way from the top of their heads and led to a point that stopped at the top of their sternum. They looked like warrior angels as they stood over me. One drew out a large club that was hand-carved with letters and symbols all over it. Then, whack, everything went black. I woke in a haze. Everything was blurry. My skin burned, my head throbbed, and my whole body stung like I had been stung by 1,000 wasps. The light was blinding. It was so bright and hot. It took a few moments for my mind to clear and my vision to see what was going on. I was on the ground on my knees. I was only in my underwear. My arms were stretched out, each wrist tied off with rope. Each rope was tied off to a pole. Each side of me was one of those guys that I had seen, holding the poles, stretching my arms apart, nearly pulling my chest apart. The heat and light came from the bonfire that I had seen. It was a couple of feet in front of me, boiling my skin. I looked down at my body and noticed cuts and slashes all over it. They must have dragged me through the brush, cutting my skin to shreds. I screamed out to them, "What do you want? Let me go." That was the only thing running through my head. I kept screaming it over and over. When I would try to stand or back away from the fire, The two men would pull the poles tighter, forcing me back to the ground, my eyes melting out of my head. The heat dried them so much that they felt like they were going to crack and shatter into pieces. This went on for minutes or hours, not sure which, before I heard a voice right behind me. It was foreign, not English. It sounded haunting and chanting. I couldn't understand a single word it said. All that I could tell was that it was a man speaking. I turned my head around to see who was making the sound. What I saw silenced my screams. All I could see of him was a strand of feathers bouncing on his back. It looked like a headdress that Indians used to wear. It went all the way down his back. As I strained to turn to get a better look, the two men beside me turned me around to face the man, and he was wearing a headdress. Then I could see that he was addressing a congregation of people. The man wore an elaborate white robe with beads and feathers all over it. He turned around to face me, and I noticed that his headdress was a part of an armored helmet that was shaped like a lion's head, with the headdress being its mane. He wore an armored chest plate too. He studied me for a moment, then turned back to the congregation. The congregation all sat on logs, wearing black robes that went over their heads. They looked like sheet ghosts, but each had antlers coming out of their heads. All of them sat in complete silence and stillness as they listened to the chief as he danced and chanted in front of them. Every once in a while, the chief would say something that would make the congregation moan and groan, swaying in their seats. At the peak of his sermon, he turned and faced me. He slowly walked to me. I couldn't tell what he was saying, but I knew he was telling them about me. He pulled out a knife from beneath his robe. It was white and jagged. It looked like it was made from bone. He took a slash at my arm. I screamed out in pain. He put the blade back on the cut and held it there for a moment, collecting my blood. After the blade was completely red, he turned back to his people and held up the blade to show them. They groaned even louder, swaying intensely. That sound came again. The animal I had heard of. It was there, just in front of me in the woods. I strained to see into the darkness. I hadn't noticed it, but in the middle of the congregation, there was an aisle. At the end of the aisle was a large ring of woven branches. It must have been 10 feet wide. The sound came from behind it. So close, the sound chilled my bones, even with the fire burning my skin. I had never heard this animal before today, but I knew that sound was for a hunt. Everyone became silent. Even the chief stepped back out of the way and kneeled. Everyone bowed their heads. I looked around desperately to find a way out. Even the two holding me down were kneeling with their heads bowed. I tried to take my chance. I thrashed and pulled away, but with no avail. Each time I pulled, the ropes pulled tighter. I kept trying until I heard a pop in my arm. I pulled my arm out of its socket. The pain screamed through me. They continued to pull, paralyzing me in pain. The howl came again. This time, it sounded like it was laughing at me, almost like a hyena taunting me. I looked through the ring into the darkness and saw red glowing eyes looking at me. Its head came into the light. It looked like a mix of a bear, a panther, and a werewolf. Out of its head grew thick horns that curled back to its shoulder blades. It stepped through the ring, revealing its body. The black, shaggy fur bounced with each step. It moved like a lion, with its head low to the ground, keeping its eyes locked on mine. I could see the power and grace of this beast. I was terrified, but I couldn't help but gawk at its dominating presence. As it neared me, all I could think about was how I had treated my girlfriend. All she wanted was to spend time with me. I thought that this was all about me, but it should have been about us. I couldn't even talk to her on the phone. I just texted her what she wanted to hear to get her to shut up so I could get back to myself. I abandoned her to follow the story of a dead man when she was alive and wanted me. Its hot breath was on my face. I looked into its deep red eyes and saw nothing but anger. A powerful swipe of its paw put me face down on the ground. The two guys holding my arms let go of their poles as the creature put its paw on my back and large blades ripped up my back as it pulled me closer to it. It took every ounce of energy that I had left to scream out in pain worse than I had ever felt. Large teeth sank into my neck as I was dragged back into the woods. As I watched the ground pass underneath, I went deeper into the darkness.
The beginning. The old farmhouse sits just outside the edge of the city. A few miles of pasture separate it from the chaos of everyday city bustle. Paint peels from the wood cladding. It is the last attempt to save the wood before it needs to be replaced. 3 generations grew up in that house, and upkeep was always the intention, but was left unattended with the everyday chores that come with a farm. It can be seen from the road, poking above the corn stalks. The heat from the late July sun beat down on the land. The only living thing that can be heard is cicadas. Even the dogs stay hunkered down under the porch for a little relief. Once the heat breaks in September, it will be time to harvest the corn, leaving behind little daggers for hundreds of acres around. Inside the house, it is anything but quiet. A loud siren rings through the house, coming from the television. After a few seconds, an announcer's voice comes on with an emergency screen. This is an emergency broadcast for Crawford County. Governor Ridley has issued a state of emergency. All attempts to go outside are forbidden. Everyone is asked to stay indoors and not to reach out to friends or loved ones. The voice leaves, and the sirens return. This broadcast plays on repeat as the residents make their way in and out of rooms, grabbing bags, guns, supplies, and taking them out of the house. Gary and Becky are already at the cabin. Justin and Bree are on their way. They have their kids. Rocklin, only necessities. Randy barks on his phone, throwing out orders to the other line and everyone at the house. He's reaching 50, but his soul remains the same as the day he left the military 20 years ago. He is the 3rd-generation owner of the house. A 16-year-old boy holding his beloved PlayStation returns to his room, doing as his father instructed, and puts back the console. Growing up, Rocklin never did well with an authoritarian parent. He has never been feminine by any means, but his father would disagree. As a result, Rocklin had always gravitated towards his mother. He looks around his room, trying to find acceptable items to take. He grabs his school backpack, emptying it on the floor, and fills it with a few pairs of clothes, his old baseball bat, and he throws a few of his favorite PlayStation games in. Everyone takes their last load out of the house as Randy inspects the house, making sure everyone did their part. Happy with the result, he grabs his backpack out of his trusty recliner. A couple of rifle barrels stick out of the top of the bag. He reaches for the side table drawer, pulling out an old Glock 19. Rocklin throws his bags in the sliding door of a 1995 Town and Country minivan. His little sister, Sierra, helps him load up the last of the bags into the van. She turned 10 2 weeks ago, and she is still telling everyone how old she turned. Right now, though, her age is the last thing on her mind. She is confused, but she is trying her hardest to do what she is told and not ask questions. Randy's little brother, Travis, tries his hardest to bring Randy's rusted Chevy C10 to life, but the engine just rolls and rolls. Randy throws his bag in the back of the truck and notices Travis struggling. "Travis, take the van," Randy demands Travis. "Rocklin, you are with him. Sierra, you are with me. Let's go." Travis continues trying to get the truck to start. The radio keeps turning on with each attempt. The emergency broadcast is on every channel. "You're not giving it the gas right. Get out. I will get it going. You're just going to kill the battery." Travis gives up his attempt and lets Randy try. After a couple of pumps on the gas pedal, the truck starts to purr. Before doing as her father said, Sierra digs through one of the bags in the van and pulls out her teddy bear. It has been a few years since she played with it. It is sticky with aged dust. She brushes it off and runs to the passenger seat of the truck. Now that everyone is in their assigned vehicles, Randy yells to Travis, Denise is still at work. We need to pick her up before heading out. That's in the center of town. Do you think that's the best idea? We are not leaving her in there. Without waiting for Travis's response, Randy takes off down the drive, headed for town. Inside the truck, Sierra clings to her stuffed animal. Out of the corner of Randy's eye, he notices a tear running down his daughter's cheek. He does not want to embarrass her by bringing attention to it. Aren't you too old for that thing? The much more gentle approach. What's happening in town? Why are you worried about Mom? She wipes her eyes, trying to hide it from him. Everything is going to be fine. I'm not going to let anything happen to you guys. I promise. Is Mom in danger? Mom is fine. People are acting weird in town, so we are going to pick her up. What do you mean, weird? It seems like a sickness is spreading, making people attack each other. Do you mean like when Spike got rabies and tried to bite me? I'm not sure. We are going to get away from people for a little while until we know what is going on and everyone is better. Dad, that sounds like a... She is cut off by Randy, who notices something in the road. Whoa, what's going on here? A man is walking down the center of the road. As they get closer, Randy notices that the man has a large wound on his arm. The man is walking slowly, maybe in shock from whatever accident he was in. Randy stops the truck and jumps out to see if he needs help. Stay in the truck, Sierra. I'm going to see if he is okay. Before Randy can even get his feet on the ground, Travis is beside him. The two of them approach the man who is still walking slowly. The man notices them and walks straight towards them. Sir, do you need some help? You know, walking down the middle of the road is a good way to get ran over. Randy asks the man, but there is no response. Hey, mister, what happened to you? You are losing a bunch of blood. Did you wreck your car? Randy scans the landscape, trying to see the man's car. As Randy and Travis get closer, the man lunges at them. They jump back, avoiding the man. Dad, that's a zombie. Neither Randy nor Travis notice Sierra get out of the truck. Sierra, get back in the truck, Travis demands his niece. They watch to make sure Sierra goes back. As they do, Randy has a moment to think about what she said. It can't be, right? He asks Travis, as he looks back at the man who has made it back to his feet and is walking towards them again. No, there's no way. Sir, don't take another step. Randy tells the man, but he does not seem to hear a word Randy says. Step by step, the man gets closer. Randy pulls his Glock on him. I will shoot if you take another step. The man seems unfazed. Bang! The shot rings out across the land. The man's arm jerks back from the force of the bullet, but he continues taking step by step, completely unaware that he has a hole in his arm. Randy and Travis slowly step backwards as the man gets closer. Beside them, they did not realize, but Sierra had joined them again. That's what the news is all about? He's a zombie. You have to shoot him in the head. The man lunges at them. Bang! The man falls to the ground, lifeless. Thick, coagulated blood oozes out of his forehead. Sierra looks at the man with curiosity. It was kind of gross to her, but it caught her off guard. She figured that the blood would spew out of him as it does in the movies. In the distance, behind them, sirens can be heard getting louder. Randy grabs Sierra and drags her back to the truck. Come on, we gotta get out of here, he tells the two. Speeding down the road, Randy is white-knuckling the steering wheel. Sierra watches him sweating from stress. Her whole life, he had seemed like a hardened warrior, but now that he had to bite and not bark, he was falling apart. Dad, it's okay, you had to. He was going to bite you. Then you would be one. He didn't have a weapon. I shouldn't have... Never mind. I shouldn't be talking about... Dad, calm down. Drive the speed limit. Why are you freaking out? I thought you were in wars. He lets off the gas. Without the roaring of the engine, he can hear the outside. He had left the sirens so far in the distance that he could no longer hear them. The silence calms him and allows him to focus again. "You're right, honey. I'm sorry." Claire moved away from the city 10 years ago. After being hit on a couple of times by homeless men as she walked to her apartment late at night after her shift, she decided that the city was not the life for her. Shortly after moving away, she met Tim at the new church she started going to. A year later, they were married. Gage came a year after that. Her perfect little farm life was complete. Her kitchen was hot. The old air conditioner could not keep up with the humid weather outside. Every evening when she cooked, it was all their air conditioner could do to keep it around 80 in the kitchen. She turns the burners off and takes a big drink of sweet tea. She normally times it perfectly, but today she finished dinner early. Or maybe Tim needed to get gas on his way home. She takes the extra time for a small break. She can hear Gage in the living room playing a video game. She looks out the window, watching the heat break up the horizon like water floating in the air as she sips on her tea. A few minutes go by and she finally hears the front door open. "Just finished dinner, honey." He does not respond to her. She can hear him start to wrestle with Gage. She smiles, thinking about them playing together. "Dad, stop," Gage says from the other room. "Will you guys stop messing around and come make a plate?" They continue to play. "Tim, come on." "Help!" Gage yells out. He tries to say something else, but it is muffled by their scuffling. The smile starts to fade. He is already late. If they keep wasting time, the food will get cold. She marches into the living room to break them apart. Horror crosses her face. Tim is covered in blood. He is on his knees in the middle of the living room, eating an inside-out Gage. "Tim?" is all she can get out. She is frozen, not believing what she is seeing. Tim looks up at her, then sprints towards her. Claire remains frozen. He plows into her, knocking her on her back. He lands on top of her, clawing at her and trying to take bites of her hands as she fights him off of her. She gets in one good kick to his gut, launching him off of her. She scrambles to her son. "Gage!" She tries to make sense of what she is looking at. Tim jumps up and runs for her. She rushes back to the kitchen with Tim right behind her. The pot of green beans is still steaming as she grabs it and smacks Tim in the face. His skin blisters and reddens from the boiling water. The hit makes him stumble and hesitate for a second as his brain settles back into place. Claire uses the moment to make her exit. She dashes for the front door. "Dad, what's going on over there?" Sierra asks, pointing at a small house on the side of the road. Randy looks where she is pointing. A woman is running out of the house, frantic as a man chases after her. Claire tries to wave Randy down for help, but she is dragged to the ground by her hair as Tim catches up with her. Tim claws and bites her face, peeling flesh off with each swipe. Randy slams on his brakes. He barely gets the truck in park before he jumps out of it. As he runs to the couple, Travis has stopped too and is running right behind him. "Get off her!" Travis yells at Tim. Randy grabs Tim by the shoulders and throws him off of Claire, but it is obvious that they are too late. Claire lies on the ground, gulping for air, drowning in her blood. Her face is slashed up with cuts and bites. Steam comes from a deep cut in her neck with each attempt to breathe. Travis goes to her side, trying to apply pressure on her neck to stop the bleeding. "What do I do?" Travis pleads to Randy. Before Randy can help, Tim jumps up and charges after Randy. "What the hell are you doing?" Randy yells at Tim. Without answering, Tim dives at him. Randy pulls his Glock, and with a quick shot, Tim falls to the ground without movement. Randy turns back to Travis, who is terrified. Claire's attempts to breathe soften as the fear in her eyes leaves. The two stay in silence for a few moments until they hear the sirens catching up to them. They really are. Randy is cut off by a police cruiser pulling into the drive. The policeman jumps out of his car and pulls his gun on Randy and Travis. "What's going on here?" The policeman seems to be around 30 with short gelled hair into spikes. "He attacked her. I didn't have a choice." Randy pleads with the man. "Was he infected?" Travis cuts in. "Can you lower your gun?" "Answer the question," the policeman demands. He was attacking her. We tried to help, Randy tells him. The policeman notices the kids in the cars watching the show out of the windows. You guys in the cars, I need you to get out and stand next to them. He signals for Sierra and Rockland to stand with Randy and Travis. They do as they are told. Have any of you been bitten or scratched by an infected? Come on, man, he was sick. Stop calling him that, Travis says. No, none of us has been touched by them. Randy answers the question to help relieve some of the tension. The police officer lowers his gun. All right, you guys stay there. I'm going to call this in. We have to leave. My wife is working in the city. We need to pick her up, Randy says. No can do. No one is allowed in or out. I was heading to my post. The city is on strict lockdown. My wife is in there. I'm going to get her. I'm really sorry about that, but that cannot happen. I have orders to shoot anybody trying to leave or enter. She is in there with people like that. You have to let me go in and get her. I'm sorry, man. The policeman turns around, going to his car to make the call. As soon as he turns his back to the family, Rockland sprints for his dad's truck. Hey, stop! The truck peels out as Rockland speeds away towards town. The policeman runs after him with his gun drawn and aimed. Randy runs after the cop. He is just a kid, don't shoot. The truck is too far away to take an accurate shot. The cop lowers his gun and then goes to his cruiser. He reverses it to block off the road. He gets out and marches straight up to Randy. Get in your vehicle and get out of here. If you try to go after him, I will shoot you. Travis intervenes. That's bullshit. We have to go get him. The cop aims his gun at Travis. Whoa, man, what the hell? Bang! The shot rings in everyone's ears. Travis still stands without a mark, but behind him, Claire falls to the ground. Only the cop notices her rise from the dead. Everyone looks at her as her head drains. Do you have any idea what is spreading in there? This is bigger than your little family. I'm really sorry about your wife and kid, but I cannot let all of you go in there. Sierra makes her opinion heard. They are going to be fine because we are going to get them. Randy puts his arm around Sierra's shoulder and guides her back to the van. Come on, let's go. We have to get out of here. The cop gives them a warning as they make their way back to the van. You guys better not come back trying to get into the city. I am on temporary guard until the military gets here. Most men spend their weekends watching other men play with balls on television. Their entire masculinity is wrapped up in them yelling at the TV and dipping wings into ranch. That life never appealed to Randy. After retiring from the military, he bought a small house in the woods and spent most of his time in solitude. When he got married, the house was too small to raise a family, so he and Denise bought the old farmhouse outside of town to start their happily ever after. Randy kept the house in the woods, and on weekends, he would take the family there to get away, go camping, fishing, hunting. But most importantly, he spent the time preparing for an event. Over the years, he has built the house to be completely off the grid. A few years ago, he installed a solar array. He uses it to power his lights, appliances, and ham radio. When he built the house, he had an outdoor wood boiler installed. As long as he is around to put a few pieces of wood in it a couple of times a day, then he can heat his house and have unlimited hot water. He does not let very many people see his house, but the few who have all think that he went way over the top on his greenhouse. He has a pond down the hill from the greenhouse that is full of fish. There is chicken wire over the pond that is a part of his chicken coop. The whole system is kinda complicated, but it all runs off of shit. The chickens shit in the pond that feeds the algae in the pond that the fish eat. The shit water from the fish is pumped up to the greenhouse, which is used to water all the plants. After the water goes through all the dirt, it drains back into the pond to start the process over again. Besides the chickens, he also has about 10 goats. They help keep the land clear of grass, and they use a few of them for their milk. Along with the chickens, he has built up a flock of guineas. They help the chickens eat the small bugs like ticks and fleas. They also keep predators away, like snakes. He also got a couple of Highland cows last year. They are almost pets to him. He got them to breed and to make money off their calves. He also planned to butcher 1 or 2 a year to keep the freezer full of beef with lower fat and cholesterol than normal beef, but he ended up falling in love with the animals. They also eat the thorny plants in the woods. As they pull up to the house, there are already a few cars in the drive. They enter the house in chaos, as everyone who has already arrived runs around trying to get the place ready for a long stay. A short, pot-bellied man is the first to notice the 3 walk through the door as he is unloading cans of vegetables that he had brought from his house. "Randy, Travis, lil' girl, I was getting nervous," Gary yells out in excitement. "When you think of a redneck, that's Gary," loud without a filter. Gary has been a family friend with Randy and Denise since before Sierra was born. "It's Sierra, Gary," Sierra corrects him. Gary's wife stops what she is doing when she hears Sierra's voice. Becky, a couple of years younger than her husband, is 35. She has always been fond of Sierra. For a long time, Sierra called her Aunt Becky. Her excitement turns to anxiety when she notices Randy and Travis behind Sierra without Denise or Rocklin. "How is it out there? Did you see anything? Where is Denise and Rocklin? Are they on their way?" "Whoa there, Beck. Let him speak," Gary tells his wife. Randy tries his best to answer all her questions. "We need to get them. They are in town. The entire city is quarantined. We will have to sneak in. They have the roads blocked with police. The military is on their way." Confusion sets over Gary's face. All this over a little sickness? "They are zombies," Sierra explains to Gary. In the corner of the living room is a ham radio that Justin has been working on quietly. He is not quick to emotion. Rather, he sits back and assesses each situation. Even while trying to get the old radio to work, he was listening. "How are we getting in then?" Gary, completely oblivious that Justin was talking, blurts out his thoughts. "Zombies? Don't believe it. Government is covering something up. Yep. That's why they won't let nobody in or out. Trying to get rid of evidence before someone finds out." Randy knows that he is going to have several hours of hearing Gary talk about his conspiracies and how every little thing that goes wrong is the government's fault. He does not want to start that yet, so he ignores Gary and responds to Justin. "We are going to have to go in at night. Go through the woods." Sierra tries to prove to Gary that they know what they are talking about. "We saw them. They were eating people." "Eating people?" Becky questions with suspicion. A light twinkles in Gary's eyes. "We got Nazi zombies?" He could not be more excited about the idea. "They're not Nazis," Sierra tells Gary. Gary can hardly hold in his excitement. "The left has been calling us Nazis this whole time. I'm kinda liking the way that sounds now." Randy tries to take back control of the conversation before Gary goes off on zombie this and zombie that. "This sickness is making people go crazy. They are trying to kill each other. We are going to have to go in prepared." Gary leaps with joy. "I'm going to kill me a Nazi zombie." A big reason why they bought the farmhouse was to keep this house a secret. Most people have no idea that he owns it. The few people who do know about it are with him right now. He has one little thing, though, that he has kept a secret from everyone. Not even his wife knows about it. In his mind, there was no need for anybody to know about it unless they needed to use it. Today was the day. Randy takes the group out back. There is an old tool shed in his backyard. He moves some old tools out of the way and pulls up an old, dirty rug. Underneath is a big metal door that has been concreted into the floor. He lifts the heavy door, revealing a staircase that disappears into the darkness. He steps down into it, drowning in the black. With a loud click, light pours out of the hole. As they go down the stairs, they discover a large concrete room. Every inch of the walls are covered with gun racks completely full of every type of gun you can imagine. The center of the room has a couple of rows of metal shelves that reach to the ceiling. The shelves are full of canned food, tools, clothing, medical supplies, and ammo. In one corner is a desk with all the supplies to pack bullets. Grab everything that you can. Sorry, girls, this is going to be a guy trip. Everyone looks around, amazed. After Randy tells the girls to stay, Becky tries to defend herself. What? No, I'm not staying here. I can help. If this sickness gets out, the population is going to go to shit. We need to keep the women safe at all cost, Randy points out. Becky is pissed, but she does not argue. The three men start grabbing guns and ammo. Sierra, go grab some scissors. Confused, Sierra asks, what for? You saw that girl get pulled down by her hair. That would be a terrible reason to die. We can't have that. No, I'm not cutting my hair. You said we have to stay here anyways. Becky tries to protest for Sierra. Yeah, there is no need for that. Sorry, this isn't a debate. Do as I say. Sierra considers arguing with her dad, but knows that it would not be her best idea, and leaves the bunker. Justin loads bullets into magazines and looks around at the sheer amount of guns. Do we really need all this firepower? They are going to figure this out soon, and we will have a vaccine. We need to focus on collecting the sick for research. This isn't going to just end, the way I see it. We can't wait around for a vaccine. This is going to spread fast, and the more it spreads, the harder it will be to stop. The only way this is going to end is when every one of those things are dead, Randy tells Justin. All of the men are loaded up and ready for their mission. Things? Justin asks. Randy chambers around in the Armalite rifle that he is holding. Motherfucking zombies.